What, to you, is the headline in this report? And as we sit here, do you think you'll carry out all of the recommendations?
Well, I think it's really clear the system's broken. I mean, whether you speak to a campaigner, whether you speak to a parent, wherever you go up and down the country, everybody tells you the same. The system is broken. Soaring bills, too much pollution in. Now, this today is part of the third step of a process that we've already started. So our first part was about resetting accountability, introducing the Water Special Measures Act. So we're banning bonuses, introducing criminal liability. Then it's about literally rebuilding it, getting that £104 billion of investment into the sector so that we've got the money to improve the sewage infrastructure, upgrade our sewage treatment works. And today it's about what we're calling for, which is a revolution in the sector. Tinkering around at the edges isn't going to be enough. We need root and branch reform, and that's why I'm really pleased that we've got the report out today.
Can I just check, did you say you've already banned bonuses? I don't think that's happened.
Yes, that's right. So in the Water Special Measures Act, we introduced a clause in that which banned unfair bonuses for polluting water buses, and so that has something that's already come through the Water Special Measures Act.
Not banning bonuses overall. Talk to me about what the difference between the regulator, currently as it is, and the new ombudsman that's being suggested is?
So the idea of the ombudsman is water feels like it's always been a poor relation compared to many of the other industries, energy included. So if you as a customer have a problem with your water, of course you can go to your water company, but if you want to kind of go and really fight whatever it is that's happened to you, the CCW, the Consumer Council for Water, which currently exists, hasn't got the same powers that an ombudsman has when they're working in the energy sector. So this is about giving power back to the consumers to be able to deal with unfair situations that they face. And the powerful thing about an ombudsman is an ombudsman, in the way that we're talking about it, has the power to say to a water company, you have to go and do this. This is our undertaking, this is our decision, you have to go and do this, whether you want to or not. And that's about restoring power back to the consumer, because let's be honest, some consumers around the country have been treated terribly by some of these water companies.
So in terms of, I'm really interested you use that phrase, restore the power back to the consumers, and that the companies have been treating them badly.
Some companies.
Well, no, that's what I want to get to. So at the same time, the report from Sir John Cunliffe also saying that this has to be attractive, ultimately, to the private sector,
yes,
to maintain the sort of system that we have at the moment. Is the government at the moment being very loud and clear there is no route to nationalisation here?
Yes, we've been very clear from that from the beginning. We were clear about that in the terms of reference of the report, because I didn't want to mislead anybody out there. We've been very clear this isn't about nationalising this industry, but this
Why
is
not,
about...
Though?
To be really honest with you, it's because what I want to achieve in the next 5 years is cleaner rivers, lakes and seas. And if I start going into the route of nationalisation, what I'm actually going to end up doing is having a legal row with lots of water companies for the next few years. They'll immediately pull the investment, because why would you, as a private investment, invest in a water company if you think that's just going to be taken over? So the private investment would dry up. It means I haven't got the money to fix the sewage pipes. I haven't got the money to upgrade the sewage treatment works, and I'll be in a fight with lawyers for years. To me, that isn't what the public want to see. What the public want to see is in 5 years' time, we've got cleaner rivers, lakes and seas. I'm a pragmatist. I'm focused on what the public wants, not on, whichever model it is that people are shouting for. But in 5 years' time, have we got cleaner rivers, lakes and seas?
It's really interesting, that. And obviously, in transport and trains, the government's taking a slightly different approach. Rather than the sort of blanket question of should you buy out all private investors today and nationalise the entire industry, I guess there's a sort of somewhere in the middle, which is the next time we come up with one of these companies struggling financially, as we've seen with a lot of them individually over the last year or two, why not just let that company go bust? It's their own making. It's not you as a government saying we are either for privatisation or nationalisation of the industry as a whole. But why get involved in trying to sweeten the terms, to get private sectors over the line for another round of funding? If a company fails from here, why not let it go bust and pick it up for peanuts on the other side?
So we have a system called special administration. So that's basically if a company becomes insolvent, it goes into special administration. And that's because for a water company, obviously people still want to turn their taps on and get water. They still want to flush their toilets and that waste get taken away. So it has special administration. Now, we as a government aren't talking about sweetening any deals or doing anything like that. We've been quite clear when it comes to environmental legislation and the rules. They apply equally and fairly to every single company. If a company enters a special administration, then the court appoints a special administrator to run that company during the period where it's in that system. So we're not bailing out any company. We're not looking at sweetening any deal. But of course, we've got to be responsible. You'd want to have a system where if that happened to a company on day one, day two, your water would still come through your taps, your sewage would still be flushed away. So there has to be a system in there to step in. That's what special administration is.
And so there'll be no further government guarantees or particular offers to encourage private capital into these companies?
Well, of course we want to see private investment. I mean, we've secured £104 billion over the next 5 years. That's a massive amount of money. That's the biggest amount of money going into any industry that we've seen. And the great thing about it is not only does it help fix everything that's broken, but it's also 30,000 jobs up and down the country in every single region of the UK. So, I mean, we've secured that money. Of course we want that private investment. And actually what we think is by having the right regulation, and I've spoken to so many investors, I've been to every water board, I've spoken to loads of them, they all say the same. They want a stable regulatory system. Lots of them are looking for that long-term, low-risk types of investment, and that's what they want to see, stability across regulation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the jobs would go away if the owner of the company became the government. So I think it's just a slightly different point to make there. I'll come back to a broad bit of criticism that's happened over the last 24 hours as the Environment Secretary was out yesterday, which is actually how ambitious all of this is. Whether it's changing the structure of the industry, which it sounds like isn't changing at all, or just on the headline things you want to achieve. You said 5 years, it would be how you measure it. Halving sewage spills by 50% by 2030. Already in December, Ofwat, the regulator that I think you're saying hasn't done enough, said they would fall by 44% by 2020. So I don't quite understand, by 2030, excuse me. Mm-hmm. You're increasing it by 6% by abolishing a regulator that you're saying has failed. I mean, it doesn't feel particularly ambitious.
Well, I'm pleased you've mentioned this because it gives me a chance to clear up something I was seeing all over social media yesterday myself. So Ofwat's target is based on data from 2021. That's when we had an 87% coverage of the entire network. We're having our baseline data from 2024 because that's when we had 100% coverage of the entire network. So we're saying once we've covered the entire network, so we know how much sewage there is, because if you're only covering 87%, you don't know how much sewage there is. So we're saying it from the point at which we had 100% coverage of the network. That's our baseline target, and that shows where we want to get to in the next 5 years. So then you can judge us on something which is more accurate because it's covering the entire network. So that's why we've used 2024 as our baseline. That's why Ofwat was talking about 2021. So it's kind of like apples and pears. They're not quite comparable because we're looking at when we've seen the entire network. I think that's the fair and right thing to do, is to say judges on measuring the whole thing rather than part of it.
But you're happy that halving rather than abolishing sewage in our rivers by 2030 is ambitious enough?
It's a staging post. I want to be really clear about that. I'm not happy about leaving sewage in rivers, lakes and seas, obviously not. But what we're saying is in 5 years, this is a staging post. This is where we'll get to. You know, we want a decade of national renewal. We want to restore all our rivers, lakes and seas to good environmental health, but we're going to need a decade in which to do that. So this 5-year target is a staging post. We'll cut it by 50%. Hopefully we'll get elected again and then we can finish the job.
And just finally, in terms of sort of different pricing, means-tested pricing, it sounds like is being suggested. Those on lower incomes should get lower water prices. Where does the government stand on that? Is that something you expect to embrace? And it sounds like in other areas, energy in particular, it was thought about, discussed within this government and then rejected. So why would water be different to electricity?
So at the moment, each water company has a social tariff system. So every different water company operates their own social tariff. Now, some water companies, to be fair, are quite generous, and some shareholders put their own money into supporting those on a social tariff. Other ones are different. So Sir John's recommendation is to create one across the whole of the country. Now, my concern with creating one across the whole of the country is that where you have a very generous scheme, you don't want those people in that generous scheme to actually end up, if it's lower, if you're creating a national one. So I've been going around speaking to each and every individual water company to say, what are you doing to support people on lower incomes? I'm really pleased. In December, they announced they were doubling the amount of social tariff, but I've been talking to them about things like automatic registration. How do you identify people in need? How do you communicate with them? How do you make sure they know about all of the different levels of support that are available? So I think social tariffs exist. They're all across the country right now. I think the companies could do more to reach the vulnerable customers. So John's recommendation is slightly different because he's talking about a national one, but there is one that already exists, and anyone struggling who's listening, please do contact your water company. There is help available.
Emma Hardy, thanks so much for joining us. Very interesting.
Thank you.